Eritrea is a developing country in sub-Saharan Africa bordered by Sudan to the northwest, Ethiopia to the southwest, and the Red Sea to the east. Eritrean citizens live under a corrupt government, have a weak economy, suffer heinous human rights violations, and experience a high risk of contracting infectious diseases. These hardships make Eritrea the perfect candidate for this $1 billion grant. Our objective is to improve the quality of life in Eritrea with realistic and practical solutions. With a grant of $1 billion, we plan to spend $500 million on improving agricultural practices, $300 million on establishing a better healthcare system, and the remaining $200 million on migration reform. Agriculture is an essential part of many developing nations' economies. Unfortunately for Eritrea, a substantial amount of its agricultural infrastructure was destroyed during the Eritrean War of Independence that ended in 2000. Even though large investments from the country's government in the past decade have contributed to the partial recovery of the country's agriculture, there is still immense room for improvement. While 80% of the labor force works in the agricultural field, it currently only makes up about 12% of the country's GDP. Obstacles for Eritrean agriculture include frequent chronic droughts and the widespread practice of subsistence farming. This is a type of farming where small family farms produce just enough food to feed themselves. Not only is this an inefficient use of land, but it is not profitable. Even with 80% of the Eritrean labor force participating in subsistence farming, they are often unable to feed themselves without importing supplemental grains, according to the CIA World Factbook. With the $500 million we've allocated to improving agricultural practices, we plan to subsidize farming machinery, construct roads, educate farmers on efficient techniques, and build irrigation systems to store water in case of drought. Together, these investments would allow commercial farming, a large-scale, more efficient kind of farming, to become practical in Eritrea. This would create jobs, eliminate the need to import supplemental grains, and enable the production and exportation of cash crops like coffee, sugar, and cotton, ultimately leading to economic growth. People in Eritrea have an incredibly high risk of contracting infectious diseases, including bacterial diarrhea, hepatitis A, typhoid fever, malaria, and dengue fever. This high risk can be mainly attributed to a lack of proper medical facilities, a shortage of trained doctors, an inadequate amount of medical colleges, and very few proper sanitation facilities. Currently, only 3% of Eritrea's GDP is being spent on health, which is one of the lowest in the world. As a point of reference, the United States spends 17% of their GDP on health, almost 6 times that of Eritrea.
In order to help fix Eritrea's healthcare system, we will allocate money towards setting up rural medical centers. The establishment of these centers will bring quality healthcare to where Eritreans need it the most. Secondly, we will help establish more medical colleges. It was only in 2003 that Eritrea opened up its first and only dedicated medical school. Lastly, we will improve existing sanitation centers and expand current sanitation efforts to the rural areas of Eritrea. Eritrea's migration crisis is a huge barrier to its development. Every month, about 5,000 Eritreans flee Eritrea for Ethiopia and Europe, but the Syrian civil war has overshadowed this. Even though Eritrea's migration crisis is proportionally more extreme than Syria's, refugee-accepting nations in the West are unable to see the plight and oppression of Eritreans because of its secretive government and lack of a free press. Eritreans migrate for a variety of reasons. Push factors such as Eritrea's indefinite forced military conscription policy and economic stagnation push people out of Eritrea, while pull factors such as family reunification and economic opportunity attract Eritreans elsewhere. In order to tackle these issues, we must first end Eritrea's forced indefinite conscription policy by employing a professional standing army. Since so many Eritreans are forced into the military, they cannot be economically productive members of society. Ending this policy will boost the economy and get more Eritreans economically involved. Along these lines, the implementation of small business loan subsidies will help average Eritreans establish their own businesses and will stimulate local economic development. Lastly, we will support the creation of multiple political parties because Eritrea's current one-party dictatorship is a primary causal factor of Eritrea's migration crisis and current lack of development. Our initiatives are not without risks, and chief among them is corruption. Since Eritrea has been ruled by the dictatorship of President Afewerki since 1993, the Eritrean government may be a barrier to development in and of itself, with corruption running rampant. Other risks, such as an increase in political violence and the misuse of funds, may deter some from investing in Eritrea. Nonetheless, Eritrea is desperately in need of help, and we have laid out a clear path towards a brighter future. Our development plan addresses Eritrean issues in the three key areas of agriculture, health, and migration to form a comprehensive plan to develop Eritrea and improve the livelihood of its citizens.